Today I've got 3 Am I the A-hole? Stories lined up, and I hope you'll enjoy them. Let's dive into the first one. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend she needs to live with the choice she made? My girlfriend, we'll call her Autumn, gave birth to our baby girl about 8 months ago. Before the pregnancy, we were both college students, and we still are. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we were making ends meet. Bills were paid, groceries were covered, and while things weren't always smooth, we managed without constantly stressing at the end of the month. When Autumn first found out she was pregnant, I had been using protection, but accidents happen. She really wrestled with the idea of whether or not to terminate the pregnancy. She would talk about it with me, but whenever I tried to share my perspective, she brushed it aside. I didn't press because ultimately, it's her body, and the decision had to be hers. When she finally did ask me what I thought, I told her I loved her, that I'd back whatever she decided, but that financially we weren't in a place to support a baby. I made it clear that raising a child now would stretch us thin and make life very difficult. In the end, she firmly chose to keep the baby, and I stood by her. Fast forward to today, it's been 8 months and a couple of days since our daughter was born. The issue is that Autumn now complains almost daily about how she regrets choosing to have our child because of the money struggles. After hearing it over and over, I finally snapped. I told her, "Look, you made the decision to have this baby. You can't keep saying you regret it. Be an adult and accept what you chose." She fired back that I also chose to have a baby with her, and that I should be more supportive instead of criticizing. Things escalated, and she started yelling. I ended up taking our daughter with me and leaving. It's been a few days since then, and Autumn still insists she isn't wrong. Honestly, I don't think I'm in the wrong here. Yes, raising a baby when you're not financially stable is exhausting, but a parent should never repeatedly say they regret having their child. Words like that leave scars. Even if our daughter is just 8 months old and doesn't fully understand, she's absorbing everything she hears. Kids pick up on tone, energy, and eventually words. Before long, she'll be talking herself, and I can't imagine her growing up thinking she was an unwanted burden. It's time for both of us to accept reality and love her fully. If we can't, then maybe adoption is a kinder option, letting her be raised by people who would be overjoyed to have her, instead of parents weighed down by regret. That wraps up the first story. Definitely a tough one. Now, on to the second. Am I the jerk for disinviting my family from my wedding because they wanted to turn it into my sister's big day too? For some context, my fiancé and I got engaged about 10 weeks ago, and we've already reserved a venue for November 2021. If the pandemic or other issues linger, we're willing to push it back, but that's the plan for now. My sister, we'll call her Rosie, and I have always had a rocky relationship, but the bigger problem is her fiancé Mick. I can't stand him. He's the walking definition of toxic masculinity. To give an example, my 7-year-old daughter once painted the nails of my 5-year-old son and my fiancé. Mick saw it and called them sissies for wearing nail polish. That's the kind of guy he is. On top of that, he's made inappropriate comments toward me and has even slut-shamed me. Needless to say, both my fiancé and I despise him. Here's where things get messy. My parents wanted to invite around 40 people to our wedding. We only had about 20 people on our list. The compromise was that they'd pay for 2/3 of the wedding since 2/3 of the guests were theirs. So far, the only thing we've officially secured is the venue. And thank goodness we did, because there are only 3 venues in the area, and November 2021 was the earliest available. Then last week, Rosie and Mick got engaged. She started looking into venues herself, and the first open date she found was April 2022. But instead of just waiting until then, my parents announced that our wedding will now be a double wedding. They want my sister and me to share the day. Everyone already knows how my fiancé and I feel about Mick, yet my parents are pushing this as if it's the obvious solution. So, here's the first one. My parents offered to cover about 2/3 of the cost of my wedding. Because of that, they insisted they should get the final say on how things were handled. I pushed back, saying the wedding is about who is marrying whom, not about my parents' preferences. They accused me of being immature and told me I needed to learn how to share the spotlight. But for me, the The main issue was that they expected my fiancé to be standing at the altar next to Mick. Just the thought of Mick being up there on our day makes my skin crawl. When I refused, my parents started lecturing me like I was a child, even though I'm almost 28. Their argument was that my sister Rosie shouldn't have to wait another year and a half for her turn, and if they're footing most of the bill, then they should be allowed this one thing. That's when I snapped. I told them I'd rather pay for the entire wedding myself and stick to the guest list we originally planned, which meant cutting them, Mick and Rosie, out altogether. Then I hung up the phone. My fiancé is fine with how I handled it. He wasn't expecting me to go that far, but he fully supports me. My parents and sister are furious though. They're saying I completely overreacted and acted selfishly by uninviting them over the one condition they had while paying for the majority of the costs. I thought I was standing my ground, but then my brother, who can't stand Mick either, told me I needed to chill out. He said the rational thing would have been to return the money and decline their extra guests, not to ban our parents entirely. According to him, if I don't fix this, I'm going full bridezilla. For clarity, I am absolutely giving back the money. That was only tied to letting them add their people, which is no longer happening. So yes, their money is being returned. Now, do I feel bad about refusing to let them dictate terms? No. Honestly, nobody should have to share their wedding with someone else, especially with someone who makes them uncomfortable. Everyone deserves the right to be a little selfish when it comes to their own marriage ceremony. I think I did the right thing by refusing their demands and deciding to pay for the day ourselves. If anything, I've been warned to take extra precautions, like setting passwords with the venue and vendors, and maybe even hiring some security, because who knows if they'll try to interfere or show up uninvited. And even if we work things out enough for them to attend as regular guests, boundaries need to be firm. Taking their money again is off the table, because that only gives them leverage to pull this stunt all over again. Wild family drama, right? Alright, let's move to the next story. I'm 28, my husband is 32, and we have a 3-year-old son together. There's never been a single doubt about who the father is. I've never cheated, and my husband knows that. He even admits I've never given him a reason to suspect otherwise. But last week, out of nowhere, he told me he's been feeling eaten alive by this nagging thought that maybe our son isn't his. His words were that he's been plagued by the anxiety. Our son doesn't look like a carbon copy of him, sure, but they do share plenty of features, and whenever I look at our boy I see my husband clear as day. So hearing this accusation blindsided me. When I asked him what made him feel this way, he had nothing solid, just a gut feeling. He then asked if I'd be okay with him doing a paternity test to calm his nerves. My immediate reaction was absolutely not. I was insulted. He pushed back and said he could just go behind my back and get one done without me. I told him if he did that, I'd never forgive him. The thing is, he's never struggled with anxiety before. But since the pandemic hit, he's been unemployed and spends most of his time at home with our son, while I'm working full-time from home. That hasn't been easy on him. I'm not a professional, but I can't help but think being stuck in this routine has messed with his head, maybe even made him resentful. After venting to friends, a lot of them suggested this sounds like stress-related paranoia, and that he might need therapy. So I went back to him and said if he agreed to see a therapist and maybe explore medication if necessary, I'd consider doing the test. He blew up, saying once he got the test results he'd be fine and wouldn't need all that. He accused me of making things harder than they needed to be. Again, he threatened to just do it without my knowledge, and I warned him that would be the end of our relationship. I really believe this isn't just about peace of mind. There's something deeper going on with him mentally, and I don't want to enable it by just handing him the test. Some of my friends think I should just cave and let him do it, but others say that would open the floodgates. Once you give in to irrational paranoia, there will always be something else. So here I am, trying to figure out if I'm being unreasonable. I really need to say that I don't appreciate random strangers trying to diagnose my husband over the internet. It feels extremely presumptuous and honestly out of line. I'm his wife, I live with him, and even I don't feel qualified to make that kind of judgment. Which is exactly why I want him to talk to a licensed professional who actually knows what they're doing. Another point I want to clear up. I never said I want to force him onto medication. What I meant was maybe medication could help, but only if an actual therapist or doctor decided that was the right step for him. I don't want to push pills on him, like some people assumed. I just want him to get real help. A lot of people suggested marriage counseling instead of only focusing on individual therapy, and I actually think that's a really good idea. At first, I was caught up in thinking it was just his issue, but at the end of the day we're supposed to be a team. I told myself I'd bring that up with him, and see if he was open to trying it. Before I share what happened, I'll just say up front. I didn't think I was in the wrong when I first posted, and I still don't. But I also realized that depending on what's fueling this fixation, the implications are very different. If it's irrational anxiety, that's something therapy can address. If it's that he's been pulled into toxic beliefs online and genuinely thinks this is normal, that's another mountain to climb, because he won't see it as a problem needing treatment. Honestly, part of me couldn't help but wonder about something else too. From a psychological perspective, when someone is obsessed with the idea of their partner cheating, it sometimes points to projection. They might be cheating themselves and transferring the guilt outward. I hope to God that wasn't the case here, but the thought stuck with me. Now on to what happened. Unfortunately, things have spiraled fast, and it looks like we're heading toward divorce. After my first post, I pushed him to agree to couples therapy. He resisted at first, but I told him flat out that if he wanted me to ever consider the paternity test, then therapy was non-negotiable. He finally agreed, and we scheduled a Zoom session. Neither of us had done therapy before, so it was awkward, but the therapist listened to us both, and then suggested we go ahead with the test to ease his mind. That wasn't what I wanted to hear, since I was worried it wouldn't actually solve anything. But my husband was thrilled. I reluctantly agreed, but insisted we review the results during a session with the therapist so she could help us process. He was fine with that. We did the test. Results came in. We joined the Zoom session to hear them together. The outcome was exactly what I knew it would be. He's 99% confirmed as our son's father. I expected him to finally be relieved, maybe even apologize, maybe even cry a little after putting me through all this. Instead, he was stone-faced and angry. The therapist asked him how he felt, and all he could say was, "It's over. I don't want to talk about it. It's done." He repeated that like a wall shutting out any attempt at discussion. When I tried to share how hurt I felt, he snapped at me. He actually yelled, something he's never done before. "What else is there to ****ing talk about?" he shouted, right there in front of the therapist. I was stunned and humiliated. The therapist suggested we take a break and schedule another session later, after he had time to process. Afterward, he wouldn't even look at me, wouldn't speak. The fact that he was so angry about proof that he is our son's father just broke me. We ended up in a screaming match at home, and I told him I couldn't do this anymore. He stormed off to stay with his brother, leaving me and our child behind. My mom has moved in temporarily to help me manage things. I tried reaching out over the weekend, asking if he'd consider another therapy session, and his response was basically, "Do you really think that will help?" And I had to be honest with myself. I don't think it will. The speed of this breakdown has left me reeling. Just a month ago, I would have said we had a happy marriage. Now I don't see any path back. Writing this out feels strangely cathartic, even though it hurts. From where I'm standing, it looks like he already wanted out. The paternity obsession was just the excuse. Maybe he thought if I refused the test, he'd get to play the victim. Maybe he hoped the test would prove him right, so he could walk away feeling justified. When that didn't happen, he switched tactics and made himself so unbearable that I'd be the one to pull the plug. Either way, I don't think this was ever really about our child's paternity. I think he wanted to end the marriage but couldn't admit it directly. And now here we are. Sorry this isn't a happier update, but that's where things stand.